The cost of living crisis is going to have a lot of very unfortunate consequences to a lot of people, and it is going to do a lot of harm. And one of the areas in particular it seems to be doing a lot of harm in is schools. And I am quite shocked, although I shouldn't really be, because over the number of years, especially doing this, I have looked at can you predict sort of future headlines? And with this government, it has actually become very, very easy to predict crises, or at least future headline, because they refuse to take a long term view of situations or problems, or they'll put a sticking plaster over a problem and hope there, I hope that's enough. But very often it is just not. And one problem in particular is how the not only the cost of living crisis is going to affect schools, but also the energy crisis as well. Because you can already see the predicted results. And one of the things I can certainly see, because it's only going to take one photograph and it will kick off. And trust me, this will kick off. It will be probably a school teacher who will take a photo of her class who are all probably having to be wrapped up in coats, scarves, hats, and gloves while they are trying to do their schoolwork. And that will be the photo. And the headlines will be Rishi Sunak failed schools, or, you know, um, children children freeze while trying to learn, or deep freeze learning, whatever. You can come up with the headline yourself, but it's irrelevant. What would be more important is that photo itself. But before we go talking more about this and the problems it is really causing, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for your support. And of course, there is the YouTube thank you button and the YouTube Pony Club down below as well, which you can join and help support the channel that way. So, I said before, I've got a couple of friends who are school teachers, and I know the serious problems they've been facing for years because of Tory austerity. But even more worryingly, is not only the rise in the cost of living, but also energy prices. And energy prices in particular, as schools have now had to allocate more of their budget to heating, especially during the winter. And another thing I can certainly predict, you will probably see at some point a letter from a school go out to parents saying, as these winter months, start to roll in, please make sure that, you send your child to school with warm clothes or jumpers or, extra socks or gloves or, a warm coat. But even with the cost of living crisis, and I know there are, you know, there are schools in my local area authority where kids do not even have a warm winter coat. And I know that sounds crazy to a lot of people, but that is the case for many families in the UK, the problem they are facing. And you've also got schools with breakfast clubs, which again cost that school money. But a lot of families have relied on those breakfast clubs for years to be able to give their kids a good breakfast before they go to school because they cannot afford to do it themselves. So we're looking at schools even maybe having to cancel that. And then, of course, this is going to affect learning, which will have massive knock-on effect, which, remember, a lot of kids' learning has been also drastically affected by the pandemic. So them going into this and after this, while they're trying to learn, they're sat there in the hats or maybe nothing. They're just sat there shivering, trying to keep warm. It's not going to be a good look for the government. It's not going to be a good look at all. And I think this is going to be a massive scandal. I think this is going to be a massive scandal. It's only going to take one photo, and it's just a question of where and when this photo happens to come from. But I will tell you now, it will probably be November, December when the cold really starts to set in, where we start to see this. Because I cannot blame schools for the situation that they're in, because they have had their budget slashed for years, and this rising in the cost of living has not helped matters. And because they are now having to allocate those extra funds, mean that unfortunately it is those children who are trying to learn to try and get a good education who are going to suffer. And it is only a matter of time before we see that photo somewhere. I wouldn't be surprised if there's probably a teacher who might have even taken it probably very recently and has it saved on their phone. Maybe I don't know when it will emerge, but I guarantee you it will emerge. But it's going to be an absolute disaster. It really is. But it's going to be a disaster of the government's own making. They have known about this crisis since the beginning of last summer. They knew it was coming, and yet we have seen no attempt to make laws or prepare schools for any type of this situation. Instead, they've just been left to get on with it. Very much, as we've said all the time, austerity was left to the brunt of the local authorities. And even they don't really have the funds to allocate to the schools for extra heating, because they're now even worried about the coming cuts that could be coming down the line for them. So, unfortunately, local councils are going to be put in a very difficult decision. Do we put more money into heating, or do we make sure that we've got enough money in our social services budget to make sure that, well, old people don't start freezing to death in their own homes or in social care homes that many councils run? It's such a bleak situation. It really is, and it just goes beyond a joke at this point. And now Rishi Sunak's got to try and solve this problem. How? I don't see how he solves the problem unless he generally actually goes and puts a serious wealth tax on oil and gas companies to make sure that, all that money does go to people who need it, and to make sure that, schools can at least keep the heating on just a bit longer so that kids can stay warm. But we'll have to see. But I fully expect me in the next couple of months to be doing a story about this. I fully expect it. But as always, like I say, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and one invitation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, we'll see you all next time.